Welcome to today's class. We'll be discussing the topic agroforestry practices in West Africa. Now, limited land supply has been a major limitation to agricultural development in West Africa. In a way to solve this problem, food crops are deliberately planted on the same land management units as forest trees. Animals are also reared in the same unit. Now, this practice is known as agroforestry. So in this lesson, we will look at the topic agroforestry practices in West Africa. And by the end of the lesson, you should be able to define agroforestry. You should also be able to state the agroforestry practices. You should also be able to explain the different agroforestry combinations in production of crops and livestock. And finally, you should list the tree species suitable for agroforestry practices. So let's start with the meaning of agroforestry practices. Now, it is a land management practice involving the growing of trees in association with food crops or pastures on the same land management unit. So once food crops are grown together with trees or pastures are grown together with trees on the same land, that is called land agroforestry practices. So let's look at agroforestry practices. We have Tonga system as the first agroforestry practice. Now, this involves the planting of both food crops and forest trees on the same piece of land, and the food crops are harvested before the trees form canopies. Next we have is leaf farming. Now, this is a practice whereby forest trees are planted together with forage crops. That's leaf farming. We have forest production on farm plots. Now, here forest trees are planted on a farm plot. Now, these trees used in this system must be fast-growing to produce marketable products in a short time. Next we have is food production within the forest ecosystem. Now, this involves the deliberate production of crops in a typical forest environment. Remember, in this case, it's actually a forest environment, but some shade-loving plants can be grown in such an environment, even though the forest trees have formed canopies, but you can still grow some food crops in that environment. So it's called food production within the forest ecosystem. We have production of pasture. Here, animal, grasses, and legumes can be deliberately planted within a forest zone, just as how food crops can be deliberately planted within a forest zone. So let's look at different agroforestry combinations in production of crops, livestock, and pastures. So different ways or different combinations in production of crops and livestock, different agroforestry combinations. We have Tonga system, which has to do with combining forestries and food crops. We have silvopasture, which is also fauna-based system. So it's also a form of agroforestry. Here we're combining trees with forage and livestock production. Then we have alley cropping. Here we're alternating strips of involves strips alternating with rows of closely spaced trees or hedge species. So we're alternating strips alternating with rows of closely spaced trees and or hedge species. So that's alley cropping. What I mean here is the combination involves crops and trees or hedges, but it is done in strips. So you can see strips of crops. From the picture you can see here, you can see strips of crops, alternating in rows. This is another row of closely spaced trees. These are closely spaced trees or hedge species. So that's called alley cropping. Another combination, agroforestry combination, is aquaforestry. Now, in this system, trees shade fish ponds. So we're combining trees together with fish ponds, and the trees help to shade these fish ponds, and the leaves from these trees and the fruits from these trees which drop into the water can be eaten by the fish. Now let's take a look at some tree species that are suitable for agroforestry practices. We have the Iroko tree, we have the mahogany tree, we have the opepe, we have euphorbia, we have sesbania tree, we have the cotton tree, we have the wonderboom tree, the baobab tree, Okay, so so far this is what we've learned for today. So in this lesson, let's just have a recap of what we learned in this lesson. We talked about the meaning of agroforestry practices, which is a land management practice involving the growing of trees in association with food crops or pastures on the same land management units. Now, types of agroforestry practices include the Tonga system, which involves the growing of food crops together with forest trees and harvesting the food crops before the trees form canopy. We have the leaf farming, which is growing of food pasture crops together with forest trees. We have forest production on farm plots. We have food production within the forest ecosystem. We also looked at the different agroforestry combinations, which include silvopasture, alley cropping, and aquaforestry, which is actually combining trees together with a pond, around the pond where the trees, the fruits and the leaves on the trees can be eaten by the fish in the pond. And finally, we mentioned some tree species for agroforestry, which include the iroko, the mahogany, the opepe, euphorbia, sesbania, the cotton tree, and the wonder bloom, just to mention a few. So let's take a look at some questions and to just test our knowledge of understanding. Now this question says, an agricultural system which combines crop production with forest establishment is known as A. Tonga farming, B. Plantation farming, C. Arable farming, D. Mixed farming. Remember when we talked about the Tonga system, we said it's a system whereby food crops are grown together with forest trees at the same time on the same plot of land, but the trees, the food crops are harvested before the trees form canopies. So the answer is Tonga farming. This question says a major reason for encouraging afforestation in arid regions of West Africa is one, it serves as a windbreak to check desert encroachment. B, it serves as forest reserve for wildlife conservation. C, provides shade for crops in Tonga farming. D, increased timber production for export. The question says reason for encouraging afforestation in arid region. An arid region is a dry region without rainfall, which will most likely have lack of water. And so what would be the reason why trees should be planted in such an environment is to serve as windbreaks to check desert encroachment. So that's the answer. So I encourage you to check out more questions to test your knowledge base on this topic. Thank you.